title of the project, as it is, it's the future sustainable manufacturing in the UK textiles and fashion industry, and obviously we're sort of working on the title and defining the focus. The research context is fast fashion manufacturing in the UK, and essentially that context has kind of led to the problem, the gap we identified as speed and automation kind of being the driver for more technology, and is this actually having an impact on the ground workers themselves? And kind of on scope level, we're looking at the more micro level, so as in what's the direct environment, what's the impact on the direct environment from the technology they're using. And again, yeah, kind of looking at quick response systems, which is essentially a lot of what fast fashion is built on, whether or not they're actually using quick response systems, the principles in terms of like the speed and the pace that they're working at. And yeah, just hoping that using the Industry 5 application can sort of bring about more thought-provoking conversation around it. So to go kind of on a timeline for a few facts, so you probably all know about the Rana Plaza disaster, which happened over 10 years ago now in Bangladesh, and essentially this kind of highlights a lot of the atrocities for garment workers, poor working conditions, poor pay, and also just not being listened to at all, whether that's in industry or even academia as well. And then since then, there's been continued reports of worker exploitation, mainly from the big fast fashion brands, and actually in the UK as well. And I think there's a lot of focus a bit abroad, but you've probably heard about some of the cases over the pandemic, but it was actually been reported before then, and has even since recently, with a couple of instances of garment workers not being paid. That's happened recently as well. A lot of the literature at the moment is kind of with the UK manufacturing is kind of focus on nearshoring and reshoring, and kind of what is where the UK ecosystems are going with clothing manufacturing. And there's also a focus around kind of transparency in terms of knowing the conditions. But actually, if there's greater nearshoring and reshoring happening, but there's still problems with worker exploitation, and also there's this sense of transparency of it's great to see the people behind it, but actually what action does that actually lead to? And I think a lot of this sort of fast fashion system in particular isn't still being questioned enough at the business level, and again with this project at the technology level. So who are garment workers? As the point says, they are people, they're human beings, unsurprisingly, and I think a lot of people tend to forget that. I think as much as garment worker, that's kind of what they're labelled with, people forget that they are the ones making clothes. In this context, we're looking essentially people that manufacture and make the clothes through a cut, make and trim process, also kind of known as ready-made garments. So this project isn't really focusing on kind of the sort of harvesting and finishing processes and the raw materials. It's more just that kind of ready-made, your pattern, cutting, the sewing, and maybe the finishing in terms of pressing as well. The work is typically manual-based work as opposed to administration-based work with machinery, and it can either be within a base within a factory, shared facility, or actually at home as well. So some of the data collected might not necessarily be from just garment working factories, but hopefully as well from home workers and people that people retainers as well. So just to go, which you probably already know, but a bit of a background of sort of the Industrial Revolution from the UK-centric, Eurocentric perspective. So obviously, 1780s, mechanical power generation, that's kind of where a lot of manufacturing sort of started with it. Mass production then later came in, actually sort of changing the organisational structures of how these technologies were working. Later on, introduction of IT and computers within machinery. And then kind of what we're up to at the moment, sort of greater visualisation being introduced into the process, which is also kind of where at the moment in terms of it's happening, but it's also still very conceptual. And Industry 5 is, again, I think as Charlie said earlier, and Simeon said, like it's taking it that one step further, and actually bringing in that more sort of human centricity and not just focusing on the technology. In terms of the fast fashion industry, so it's unclear exactly when the first fast fashion brand came in, but a couple of the big names, particularly the 1970s, 1980s, they kind of developed a bit more as a result of kind of standardisation, such as from World War II, where there were certain limitations on designs, and therefore sort of manufacturing changed shape as well as a result. And then sort of in the 1990s and the 2000s, that's kind of when fast fashion really became the thing, and it sort of became a lot more prominent with high street brands. And essentially, from what we can see from our literature, is that generally as manufacturing processes become faster and more automated on larger scales, and the speed is continuing. So, for example, a lot of the fast fashion brands, we think now a lot of them are being labelled as ultra fast fashion because of how quick the turnaround is from design to make. So, a while, not even that long we thinking about it, it was a 6-month time scale, so 2 seasons a year, and now it's literally a weekly basis, so you can see how fast it's gone. In terms of defining Industry 5, so again, it's the 5th industrial transformation, and the idea of it in our project is it's leveraging human creativity in collaboration with technology, so it's not forgetting about the people that are involved, especially the people that are actually on the ground and do the work in terms of clothing manufacturing. And again, I think this is a really important definition as well from the European Commission, because it actually includes human welfare, and it doesn't just focus on the productivity and the efficiency alone, it's actually considering the people involved. So in terms of the project specifically, so hopefully it's going to involve qualitative interviews with shop floor workers, and so essentially shop floor workers, they are usually the garment workers, and management within UK factories, potentially going to go into multi-case formulation, and also focus groups. So essentially what we want to do is we want to actually get garment workers and people that are involved actually involved with designing technologies around workflow systems that will actually help them. So for example, the theory is by actually asking the people that are involved, it's hopefully going to help bring some sort of answer to sort of reduce exploitation, because they're involved, they know what the processes are like, they're not being forgotten, and they work with it on a daily basis, and it's obviously an opportunity for them to have a say in what's going on, because from my awareness, that's something that doesn't really happen. It's very much set up from a business capitalist-centric perspective, and the people that are actually doing the work that you couldn't have it produced without them being forgotten. So the unit of analysis in terms of what's going to be looked at in this research is kind of the speed, the working pace, and what people are kind of involved with on a daily basis, and their sort of current experience with technologies, particularly the workflow technologies. And again, just to highlight, so this is actually going to be an outcome-based project, so hopefully we're going to be designing around a demonstrator concept or a roadmap for suggesting how to actually design such technologies in the future to actually make it more of a social element as well. And I think this is a really nice little quote from something that I spoke to a while ago in one of their books, and it's essentially thinking about the workers and actually thinking about what their thoughts will contribute, and actually the importance of actually considering their contribution. So I hope I explained that okay, but basically in terms of the kind of reflection on Industry 5 and what will this influence it, and also what Industry 5 is influencing. So it's, again, promoting what's been spoken about quite a lot today, human centricity and social needs, but from that angle, sort of more at the manufacturing level with the people. I would like to think this hopefully will rethink stakeholder theories. I'm not working with stakeholder theory at the moment, but I might include it at some point. But essentially, I hope Industry 5 does rethink stakeholder theories as to who a stakeholder is. So when we think stakeholders, a lot of the time it is very much consumers in the business, but actually, garment workers, they are stakeholders, they are involved in the process heavily than I think they get credit for. And again, and it's something else I think was discussed today. Technology has its benefits, but it shouldn't remove humans from the process. And it's, while we all still have jobs and while we need to still earn money, at the end of the day, that's why it's so important not to take back the process and not to forget them. And I think one of the important things is as well that whilst I can imagine that all garment workers will be bothered about potentially having to say, actually, I don't think they're really given a choice in terms of they just fit into the system. So to actually give them the choice to be involved in the work that they do and sort of the more systemic issues, it might hopefully, as it says, ask people the jobs, hopefully help with some of these social issues that arise. And again, just to sort of summarise exactly what's there, so actually humanising people in jobs rather than just sort of having the technology and the organisational structures not reduce another industrial revolution to the efficiency, the speed, and just the constant demand, actually sort of thinking, right, there's something continuing perpetually here, so let's actually sort of address it at its core rather than just sending all these answers with other technologies. And just a couple of final thoughts that I think are really nice to hear. So it's generally the people who require that production, so even though a lot of information is very digital based, so people are still involved in doing it. And also, it must be said that no matter how well designed the system, how carefully selected the equipment, and how skilled the engineering, the result will only be as good as effective as the ability, skill, and the enthusiasm of the people who are actually operating the machine. So, thank you very much.
Thanks for the presentation. What will you be looking for in your case study companies? Like, what kind of profiles would you be looking for? Will you be looking to compare and contrast? Maybe we'll take some examples and apply them in the context of fast fashion from other areas of fashion industry.
Yes, that's a really interesting point actually. So essentially, it's not necessarily going to focus just on the manufacturers doing fast fashion. That's why I kind of kept it to cut made and trim and ready-made garments generally, because obviously even in luxury there is still ready-made garment processes. And I think it'll be interesting because obviously with this methodology, it probably is going to be a case of, because I've got a bit of manufacturing background and I also have a couple of contacts. It's probably going to be see who we can get to talk to, which is the best way of doing it. So I think it's going to be a case of taking the unit of analysis, asking about what I said with the speed and the working pace, but then just sort of talking to anyone we can and sort of seeing the examples of what, basically like you said, so essentially seeing different examples from different parts of the fashion industry, not just fast fashion, to see where this could go. It's quite a conceptual sort of bit of research, because there's been a couple of really interesting papers that have actually made this direct link, one of which doesn't make it as clear as the other in terms of the idea of speed and kind of the social issues, but it's something that I think is overlooked a lot, because it's clear that fast fashion is causing a lot of problems. I'm sure you all know that, but actually this one element is not being questioned. I think you're right, actually asking other sort of companies in the UK that might not be fast fashion, it'll be interesting to see what their answers are if there is a comparative contrast. Does that answer your question?
I have a question. So